even the latter half of April of 1949, the president said that he remembered when he was in Tsingtao that one could see the campfires of the communist forces in the hills around that port city, and the vice premier said yes, that those were his forces and that he was in command of those forces during that time period. So that's the development of that little vignette for what it may be worth. For those of you who wish to look further into the matter, I refer you to page 51 of Why Not the Best.
Jody, do you have a comment on the calls of commenting on Mr. Nixon's invitation?
I was asked about that today, and we'll get that for you. I haven't chased it down this afternoon, though. The question I was about the calls on inviting former President Nixon to the state dinner. If there are no further questions, why don't somebody say thank you? We'll have to work that out, Jim. Okay.
Coming up the drive. It's rolling up, right? It's rolling up.
Nixon.
Well, this is the first time that I will be at the White House at a dinner since 1961, when President Eisenhower and Mrs. Eisenhower hosted their last state dinner. The first time as a guest. And I look forward to seeing President and Mrs. Carter again, and to meet Vice Premier Deng, whom I have never met. He was out of power when I was in Peking in 1972, and also in 1976. Now, obviously, since I'm here as a guest of the President and Mrs. Carter, I will not comment on anything else with regard to this event or any other issues, and I don't want to keep the guests waiting. Thank you very much.
Done privately?
I will see him on Wednesday. Yes,
What
sir.
are your personal feelings?
I just covered that. Thank you.
得很快啊。
Let's get one photograph.
我们一照个相吧，在一块儿。
Very good. Now we go in.
Now we go in.
Okay, it'll be about 5 minutes.
Okay. Hey, Wes, you want to go over?
Vice President and Mrs. Mondale. Drs. Vicky Brzezinski and Mrs. Brzezinski.
Right here.
Mrs. Alan Cranston. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America and Mrs. Carter, and His Excellency Deng Xiaoping, the Vice Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China, Madam Jolene.
教授，中国的老专家。 完全支持中国。
3年女儿。
期事务的委员领导人，很荣幸能够见到。非常高兴见到你，高省夫人。Fraser 先生。他是那个代替那个 Woodcock class 担任那个汽车工人工会的领袖。
Woodcock training.
他是那个得到那个 Woodcock 先生的那个培训。
Get a seat, Miss Hand. Bill, get a seat. Mrs. Handler, see Bill.
Handler 夫人 Handler 先生。
I get a seat. Thank you very much.
贝克参议员，共和党那个参议员领袖。他是中共的很好的一个朋友，是一个伟大的参议员，共和党领袖。
I'm glad you changed the count.
我是中国的参议员。今年秋天啊，他访问中国，可惜那个时候啊，副总理不在国内，就没有见过面。Welcome to Mr. China again. 我很高兴能够欢迎您到美国。Must see you. 非常高兴。Mr. President.
Good evening to you.
很高兴再次见到你了。
Good to see you.
Fine.
Thank you for coming.
Coca-Cola 公司
Yes, I know. You don't have to tell me that.
I never have took care of the island.
Well, you can see if you don't come, we could invite you every time you're president. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
really Chinese and 这样的民族英语。
So good to see you.
Property taxes just went up.
就下月份啊，
Double our
突然
taxes.
中国看到非常愉快的样子。Firstly Chinese 语言。西夫人就在北京建宁的时候啊，有一句话，祝你新年好，祝你一切好。
Brad, how are you? Nice to see you. Sister Eunice. Good to see you, Eunice.
他们的参议员非常非常高兴，希望你带得很好。Thank you so much。希望美国人民向您表示好感，从那顺利健康的帮助。不要买参议员。今年秋天访问过，12月份去的。欢迎你到美国来，安德森先生，很荣幸。
Good to see you, Don. Thank you very much. Good to have you.
Hartley 先生。刚刚从中国方面达成那个5个协议，关于那个自由家庭，对这个协议的达成啊，我们感到非常高兴。Hartley。 Warner 先生。
Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
How do you do, Mr. President?
他也是那个负责石油方面的开采，希望能够在那个海南岛附近啊，跟中国合作开采石油。Good. 通用汽车公司的那个主席，他4月份访问了中国。啊，他知道那个现在通用汽车公司在跟中国方面谈判，他那个相信啊，一定会那个合作的很好。We believe you will cooperate very well.
How do you do? How do you do? How do you do, Miss Clive? Nice to know you.
Jones， 那个通用电气公司，通用电气公司。跟在那个中国方面，他把那个电气火车等方面的项目。That's good. That's fine. Jones.
Good to see you. How are you doing, man? Good to have you.
非常高兴你们来。
John. Good to see you, John.
很高兴见到你，欢迎。他好，你来很好。
Yeah. How are you? That's right.
Not quite a man.
Hello, Carlos. Yes. Nice to see 看同时啊，同时中间是同时啊，看看大家一下，一直往这走吧。
Vice Premier Deng, Madam Cho Lin, distinguished visitors from the People's Republic of China, President Nixon, my fellow Americans and friends. This house belongs to all Americans, people who are firmly dedicated to a world of friendship and peace. And Vice Premier Deng, on behalf of all Americans, I welcome you here to our house. Your visit here, Mr. Vice Premier, is an important milestone in the development of friendly relations between the United States of America and the People's Republic of China. I'm gratified that after too many years of estrangement, that our two countries have now grasped the opportunity to reestablish these vital formal links that exist between us. In the past year, more than 120 delegations from the People's Republic of China have come here to the United States to visit us. And an even greater number of American groups have left here and gone to visit China. Exchanges have already begun in the natural sciences, in space, in agriculture, in medicine, in science, in technology, and other fields. And now, with the establishment of normal diplomatic relations, the exploratory nature of these many exchanges can give way to a more valuable and a more permanent relationship. This will serve the interest of both our nations and will also serve the cause of peace. Today, for the first time since the establishment of normal diplomatic relations, the governments of the United States of America and the People's Republic of China have begun official discussions at the highest level. Our discussions are fruitful and they are constructive because both of us are keenly aware that what we do now will establish precedents for future peaceful relationships. We've not entered this new relationship for any short-term gain. We have a long-term commitment to a world community of diverse nations and independent nations. We believe that a strong and a secure China will play a cooperative part in developing that type of world community which we envision. Our new relationship particularly can contribute to the peace and stability of the Asia-Pacific region. Your nation, Vice Premier Deng, like ours, has been created by the hard work of ordinary men and women. Despite our cultural, political, and economic differences, there's much for us to build on together. The United States, born out of a revolution for freedom, is a young country with an independent history of only 200 years. But our Constitution is the oldest continuing written constitution in the entire world. Chinese civilization, with more than 4,000 years of recorded history, is one of the oldest cultures in the world. But as a modern nation, China is quite young. We can learn much from each other. There are many hundreds of thousands of Americans of Chinese origin, and their contributions to our society have been even greater than their numbers could possibly suggest. Our national life has been enriched by the work of Chinese American architects, artists, and scientists, including 3 recent winners of a Nobel Prize. Like you, Mr. Vice Premier, I'm a farmer, and like you, I'm a former military man. In my little farming community, when I grew up, our agricultural methods and our way of life were not greatly different from those of centuries earlier. I stepped from that world into the planning and outfitting of nuclear submarines. And when I later returned to the land, I found that farming had been absolutely transformed in just a few years by new scientific knowledge and by technology. I know the shocks of change in my own life, and I know the sometimes painful adjustments required when change occurs, as well as the great potential for good that change can bring to both individuals and to nations. I know, too, that neither individuals nor nations can stifle change. It's far better to adapt scientific and technological advantages to our needs, to learn to control them, and to reap their benefits while minimizing their potential adverse effects. And I know that the Chinese people, and you, Mr. Vice Premier, understand these things about change very well. Your ambitious modernization effort in 4 different areas of human life attest to that. The American people wish you well in these efforts, and we are looking forward to cooperating with you and with the people of China. In his final message, the day before he died, Franklin Roosevelt, who would have been 97 years old tomorrow, wrote these words: "If civilization is to survive, we must cultivate the science of human relationships, the ability of people of all kinds to live together and to work together in the same world and at peace." In that spirit, Mr. Vice Premier, I would like to propose a toast. To the newly established diplomatic relationships between the United States of America and to the people of the Republic of China, to the health of Premier Hua Guoping, to the health of Vice Premier Deng and Madam Cho Lin, and to the further development of friendship between the people of China and the people of the United States of America.
总统先生、卡特夫人、女士们、先生们，我们感谢卡特总统和夫人为我们举行这样隆重的宴会。借此机会，请允许我代表中国政府和人民，代表华国锋总理，并且以我个人的名义，向美国政府和人民致以良好的祝愿。我们来到美国的时候，正好是中国的春节，是中国人民自古以来作为一元复始、万象更新而欢庆的节日。此时此地，我们同在座的美国朋友有一个共同的感觉：中美关系史上一个新的时代开始了。我们两国曾在30年间处于相互隔离和对立的状态，现在这种不正常的局面终于过去了。在这个时刻，我们特别怀念生前为实现中美关系正常化开辟了道路的毛泽东主席和周恩来总理。我们也自然地想到前总统尼克松先生和福特先生、基辛格博士，美国参众两院的许多议员先生和国界朋友所做的努力。我们高度评价卡特总统、万斯国务卿和布雷恩斯博士为两国关系最终实现正常化所做出的宝贵贡献。我们两国社会制度不同，意识形态不同，但是两国政府都意识到两国人民的利益和世界和平的利益，要求我们从国际形势的全局，用长远的战略观点来对待两国关系。正是因为这样，我们双方顺利地达成了实现关系正常化的协议。不仅如此，双方还在关于建交的联合公报中庄严地作出承诺：任何一方都不应当谋求霸权，并且反对任何其他国家或国家集团建立这种霸权的努力。这一承诺既约束了我们自己，也使我们对世界的和平和稳定增添了责任感。我们相信，中国人民和美国人民的友好合作，不仅有利于两国的发展，也必将成为维护世界和平和促进人类进步的强大因素。请诸位同我一起为卡特总统和夫人的健康，为万斯国务卿和夫人的健康，为布雷恩斯博士和夫人的健康，为在座的所有朋友的健康，为伟大的美国人民，为伟大的中国人民，为中美两国人民的友谊，为全世界人民的和平和进步共饮一杯。
Thank you. 谢谢你。
几天来家？
Bye.
Night.
Thank you. Oh, goodbye now. When are you going to be married? Oh, we'll let you know. Send me an invitation. send you a little gift.
We got a deal.
All right?
Thank you, sir.
I think it's a good idea. I wasn't sure at first, but I think so too. All right.
Good night. Bye, Ryan.
Speaker come out here?
Well, in your next flight.
Yeah, in my next one.
That is nice. It's interesting, isn't it? They make them.
Channel 26 brings you outstanding motion picture comedy and drama from the Janus Collection every weekday afternoon at 2 o'clock on Cinema 26. WETA Channel 26, Washington.
Funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Ford Foundation.
From Blair House in Washington, an interview with Deng Xiaoping, Vice Premier of the People's Republic of China. I'm Paul Duke. In a few moments, Jim Lara of Public Broadcasting and 3 other network anchormen will question Vice Premier Deng in his first nationally televised interview with American journalists. The questions will be translated into Chinese, and Deng will respond in Chinese with his answers translated into English. The first question will be asked by Walter Cronkite of CBS.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice Premier, for this opportunity to meet with you, to interview you.
副总理先生，感谢您给我们这个机会，能够见见面，同你谈谈话。
请我先讲几句。
Please let me first say a few words.
If you wish, sir.
请。
我感谢美国3大电视网和公共广播公司给我提供这样一个机会，使我能够通过电视屏幕同广大的美国公众见面。我首先要向伟大的美国人民致以亲切的问候。
I wish to thank the 3 major American television networks and the public broadcasting system for giving me this opportunity to meet the American public on TV. I want, first of all, to extend my cordial greetings to the great American people.
中美两国人民一向是友好的，现在中美实现了关系正常化，这就为我们两国之间的交流和合作开辟了美好的前景。中美两国人民的利益和世界和平的利益都促使我们发展友好合作的关系。
The Chinese and American peoples have always been friendly to each other. Now that relations between China and the United States have been normalized, good prospects are in store for promoting exchanges and cooperation between our two countries. The interests of our two peoples and of world peace urge us to develop a relationship of friendly cooperation.
我这次应卡特总统的邀请，前来贵国访问，肩负着3项使命。第一是向美国人民转达中国人民的情谊；第二是了解美国人民，了解你们的生活，了解你们建设的经验，学习一切对我们有用的东西；第三是同贵国的领导人就发展两国关系和维护世界和平和安全的问题广泛的交换意见。我可以告诉美国公众，我同卡特总统和其他美国领导人2天会谈的结果是令人满意的。卡特总统和夫人，并且已经接受华国锋总理的邀请，在他们认为适当的时候去中国进行正式访问。他们将在中国受到热情的接待。
Accepting President Carter's invitation to visit your country, I'm here on a threefold mission. Firstly, to convey a message of friendship from the Chinese people to the American people. Secondly, to get to know the American people, to learn about your life, your experience in economic development, and absorb everything of benefit to us. And thirdly, to have a wide-ranging exchange of views with your national leaders on ways to develop our bilateral relations and to maintain world peace and security. I can tell the American people that the results of my talks in the last 2 days with President Carter and other American leaders have been satisfactory. And the President and Mrs. Carter have accepted Premier Hua Guofeng's invitation to pay an official visit to China at a time convenient to them. They will be warmly received in China.
我愿意回答各位记者先生提出的问题。
Now, I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Premier. In your interview last week with Hedley Donovan of Time magazine, you suggested a pact between Japan, the United States, and China to curtail Soviet hegemony, or aggression, as it's also called. Have you formally presented that proposal to the United States leadership? And if so, what was the reaction?
副总理先生，上个礼拜您同那个《时代》杂志的那个 Donovan 先生谈话的时候啊，曾经建议，就是那个中国、美国、日本之间啊，订立一个条约，来反对苏联霸权主义或者苏联那个侵略。您是不是向那个美国领导人正式提出这个建议？如果提出来的话呢，有什么反应没有？
我没有提出这样的建议。
I did not raise such a proposal.
我只是说，对于苏联霸权主义，应该做一些扎扎实实的工作。
I just said that we must deal in a down-to-earth way the Soviet hegemonism.
为了反对霸权主义，维护世界的和平、安全和稳定，需要美国、欧洲、日本、中国和其他第三世界的国家，大家联合起来，认真地对付这个对于发动战争这个危险的挑战。
That in order to oppose hegemonism and to safeguard world peace, security, and stability, the United States, Europe, Japan, China, and other third world countries should unite and earnestly
deal with this challenge of the danger of war. We do not need any kind of a pact or an alliance. What we need is a common understanding of the situation and common efforts.
Mr. Vice Premier, in your statements made here, they're public statements, and frequently to visitors in Peking, as well as your predecessors, have made statements indicating that you do not feel that the United States understands the real nature of the Soviet threat. I wonder why it is you feel that you have a better understanding of that threat than the United States leadership has.
副总理先生，在您在这里的一些公开讲话，以至于在北京您的一些讲话和您的前任这些讲话，我们感觉到了，你们好像觉得美国对苏联的威胁的真正性质认识的不如中国那么准确。我想问问，就是你觉得为什么美国缺乏这样一种认识？
这个问题是美国的问题。
That's an American problem.
我来回答。
That's not for me to answer.
但是我们希望美国采取更有效的、更有力的一些措施来对待霸权主义的挑战。
But we do hope that the United States will adopt more effective measures, more strong measures to deal with the challenges posed by hegemonism.
Mr. Vice Premier, does China plan to go to war over the Cambodia situation with Vietnam, which is backed by the Soviet Union?
副总理先生，中国是否准备为了柬埔寨形势而同受到苏联支持的越南进行战争呢？
这个问题我遇到多次的提问了。
Many people have asked me that question.
我可以告诉各位，这个中国人说话是算数的。
I can tell you all that what we Chinese people say counts.
中国任何行动都是经过深思熟虑的，都不会鲁莽从事的。
Any action taken by the Chinese is through careful consideration. We will not take any rash action.
中国对于这个无论是全球性的霸权主义或者地区性的霸权主义，都是采取坚定的立场，采取坚定的态度。
Whether it be global hegemonism or local hegemonism, China always adopts a firm position, a firm attitude.
同时，我还要告诉各位，越南侵略者除了明目张胆地用大量的军队进攻柬埔寨之外，同时在中越边境大量地制造边境事件，而且这个事件层出不穷地还在发展。
I can at the same time tell you that in addition to attacking Cambodia with great numbers of armed forces in a flagrant way, the Vietnamese are also creating a great number of boundary incidents along the Sino-Vietnamese border, and such border incidents are still further developing.
I take it then that the answer is yes, China is prepared to go to war over the Cambodia issue.
那么这样我的答复是不是您的答复是不是就是的确是的，中国是准备在柬埔寨问题上进行战争？
我们支持柬埔寨的立场是坚定不移的。
Our position of supporting Cambodia is firm and unshakable.
采取什么的步骤，采取需要怎么样对待这样的问题，我们还要研究。
But as to what measures we will adopt, as to how we shall deal with this problem, we'll still study it.
而这样的问题，不是由我们一个方面来决定的。
And a question like that is not something to be decided by us alone.
Mr. Vice Premier, great changes have taken place in China in the last few years. You yourself, sir, have reached a venerable age. You have been deprived twice of authority, very suddenly. What assurances does the United States have that you will remain in authority and that your policies of modernization will endure this new outward look toward the West, cooperation with the West?
副总理先生，您我们知道现在在最近几年，中国发生了些那个巨大的变化。您本人也是高龄了，过去您曾经2次突然的被那个剥夺了您的那个权利，有什么保证说明您会那个继续保持权利呢？有什么保证能够使得你的政策，就是您的现代化政策、教育方面的政策，对那个西方开放些政策，会那个继续下去呢？
这个问题的时候，我想的是，不是由个人的因素就可以保证，这个正确的政策的基础。
The guarantee for the continuance of a correct policy is not decided by the factor of a single individual.
关键是这些政策是不是对，是不是能够得到人民的赞成和拥护，是不是对人民有好处。如果这个政策是正确的，对人民有好处的，人民拥护的，这个就它的根本保证就在这里。
The crucial thing is whether the policy is correct or not, whether it is approved of by the people, whether it is supported by the people, whether it is good for the people. If the policies are correct, good for the people, and supported by the people, then that is the fundamental guarantee for the continuation of the policy.
If I may say so, sir, though, there are those who help to assure whether the people approve the policies. And are there not people in the leadership of China right now who perhaps have reservations about diluting the purity of Chinese society by Western influence, Western industrialization?
但是呢，对那个使得人民能够支持一个政策了，领导方面也是能够起促进作用的。那么现在中国领导人里面，是不是有人对现在这些政策有些保留，认为现在这些政策了会减少中国的纯洁性，会由于引进西方的影响，西方工业而减少中国的纯洁性？
我这点可以明白告诉大家，在这个方面，中国不但是中央的领导，是地方的领导，全国人民在这方面是一致的。
I can tell you clearly that on this point, not only the central leadership, but also our local leadership and the people throughout the country are unanimous on this policy.
在国际领导里边，有老年，比如说我就算是一个老年，有中年，也有青年。我说我们今天的我们既然是正确的，我们采取的方针、政策、步骤都是正确的。他就肯定会继续下去的。
Within our leadership, there are older people, like I myself, an older person, and then middle-aged persons and younger persons. And since the policies we're carrying out are correct, since the principles, policies, and measures we're adopting are correct, I can say for a matter of certainty that they will continue.
Mr. Vice Premier, you were saying last week that the United States had been in strategic retreat since the early 70s. Could you explain to us your thinking on that, your reason for saying that?
副总理先生，上个礼拜你曾经讲，就是在从70年代初开始，美国是进行战略上的退却，你是不是能够解释一下这句话？ 战略退却。
这个我不是讲美国战略退却，我说是在相当长一个时间内，苏联是采取处于进取的地位，美国处于防御的地位。所以我根据这样的判断，所以我们历来认为，发动世界战争只有新的世界战争只有美国和苏联两家。因为这个地位变了，所以现在战争的主要策源地是来自苏联。
I did not mean strategic retreat, but that for quite some time now, the Soviet Union is on the offensive, whereas the United States is on the defensive. And proceeding from such an assessment, it has been our contention all along that the only two countries capable of launching a world war are the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, because of the changes in position, the main hotbed of war now is the Soviet Union.
Well, in view of your previous answer about China, the U.S., Japan, and Western Europe coordinating their policies toward Russia, how might the Russians react if they feel they are being surrounded and ganged up on?
根据你刚才所说的，就是中国、美国、日本、西欧应该把他们的政策配合起来，来对付俄国。那么，如果俄国这样感觉他们被包围起来了，大家都联合起来反对他了，他会怎么反应呢？
他不能够无视全世界人民的反对。
They will not be able to disregard the opposition of the people of the whole world.
真正对霸权主义能够起到遏制、约束的作用的，我始终认为，不是这样一个条约、那样一个条约、这样一个决议、那样一个决议，而是需要扎扎实实的联合行动。
It has always been my contention that in order to deter hegemonism, to restrain hegemonism, what we need is not this or that treaty or this or that resolution, but solid, down-to-earth, united action.
尽管我也同时认为，谈判是必要的，做决议也是必要的。 订这样那样的协定也是必要的。
Even though at the same time I also consider that it is necessary to engage in negotiations, to sign this or that agreement, to conclude, to pass this or that resolution. But we cannot depend upon such things. We cannot seek for security in such things.
Let's take a specific case in point, if we might, and see how that sort of an arrangement of unification against Soviet hegemony might work. Can I assume that you, Mr. Vice Premier, are concerned about the situation in Iran, possibly resulting in benefit to the Soviet Union?
我们现在是不是举个具体的例子，看我们如何联合起来反对霸权主义。副总理先生是不是对伊朗情况表示关心，感觉到那里情况会发展对苏联有利？
伊朗，我们同世界其他各国同样的关切。
Like other countries of the world, we are concerned about the situation in Iran.
伊朗处理战略地位是十分重要。
The strategic position of Iran is extremely important.
就中国来说，我们只能在道义上表示我们的观点，在这方面我们能够做我们不能有很多作为。
As for China, we can only morally express our points of view we cannot do very much because of lack of ability there.
我想，这个凡是能有所作为的国家，应该在这方面严重的注视伊朗的军民，采取更有效的措施来解决伊朗的问题。
And I believe that those countries who are in a position to do more should adopt a very serious attitude towards the question of Iran and adopt more effective measures to help bring about a solution of the problem there.
Well, under the assumption that the United States is deeply concerned about Iran, and you are deeply concerned about Iran, under your proposal of being united in preventing Soviet hegemony, then would you not propose that we do something together to try to prevent Soviet aggression in Iran?
那么，既然是那个美国对伊朗形势非常关切，中国也非常关切。那么，根据您这么一个建议，就是说我们应该那个联合反对那个苏联霸权主义。那么，是不是我们两国应该一起做某些事情，来那个阻止苏联在伊朗的侵略呢？
就我刚才说的，我们在这边这个作为很小，或甚至于可以说无能为力。
But I just said, in this particular field, our ability to do something is very, very small. In fact, we might be said we're not able to do anything.
如果我们能够有一份力量，能够使一份劲的话，我们肯定会尽力。
If we are able to exert even a little strength there, we will certainly do so.
Mr. Vice Premier, your remarks about the Soviet Union, since you have been in this country, have been interpreted as an attempt by you to undercut President Carter's position on SALT II. Was that your intention?
副总理先生，您在美国关于那个苏联的那个讲话，被有些人解释为是想那个破坏卡特总统关于想缔结第二届战略武器协定的那个努力。是不是这就是您的意图呢？
没这个意思。
That was not my intention.
我刚才也说到的，我认为的这个同苏联进行这样的谈判，签订这样协议，是我们并不反对，甚至认为是某种必要的。
I had just said that whether it be negotiations with the Soviet Union or to sign this or that agreement with the Soviet Union, it's not something which we're opposed to. In fact, we may even say that some of it is necessary.
我只是重复说，这个我们不能寄托在这上面了。这些协议，对于苏联呢起不了多大作用的。
We're just saying that we cannot place our hopes on such agreements. That such agreements cannot play too much of a restraining role on the Soviet Union.
A columnist this morning asked the question as to whether or not you, Mr. Vice Premier, would be willing to have President Carter come to China and criticize China's policy toward the Soviet Union.
今天早上有一个那个专栏作家提到这么一个问题，就是副总理先生，如果是卡特总统到了中国以后，在中国来批评中国对苏联的政策的话呢，您愿意不愿意呢？
如果批评的对，我欢迎。
If his criticisms are correct, we welcome it.
何况我们并没有对这个美国政府现在的政策提出批评。
And what is more, we have not criticized American policy here.
我现在讲的话不是新的话，多少年来，中国领导人一直讲的就是讲这些话。
And what I've been saying here are not anything new as being said by Chinese leaders over the past many years.
Mr. Vice Premier, if the people of Taiwan, the people and the government of Taiwan, refuse to voluntarily reunite with you, the United States continues to supply defensive weapons to the people of Taiwan, even after the expiration of the Mutual Defense Treaty. What alternative do you have for reunification except force?
副总理先生，如果台湾的那个政府和台湾的人民，拒绝自愿的和中国统一起来，如果在那个美蒋条约已经失效以后，美国还继续向台湾人民提供防御性武器，那么中国除了那个使用武力以外，还有没有什么别的办法来实现统一呢？
我们力求用和平方式，使台湾归还祖国，完成祖国统一的问题。
We will try our very best, by peaceful means, to bring about the return of Taiwan to the mainland and to complete our reunification.
Is there any doubt in the Vice Premier's mind that if he should abandon peaceful means, he would be resisted by the United States with force?
副总理先生是不是有这样一个想法，就是如果中国放弃使用和平方法的话呢，中国就可能遇到美国的武力的抵抗？
不是，如果我们承担了不使用武力解决台湾这个，就等于把中国的自己的手捆起来，这个结果，就会助长促使台湾当局根本不同我们谈这个和平统一的问题。相反，这样的倒反要导致结果，最终使用武力解决台湾问题。
No, the question is, if we are to commit ourselves to not using armed force at all, then that will be equivalent to tying up our own hands, and the result then would be to have the Taiwan authorities absolutely refuse to negotiate with us for a peaceful reunification. And that could only then, in the end, lead to an armed solution of the problem.
Mr. Vice Premier, aside from friendship and goodwill, what did you most hope to accomplish on this trip to the U.S.?
副总理先生，除了那个通过这次访问增进友谊跟善意以外，您在这次访问中想达到的目的主要是什么呢？
我相信通过这次访问，主要是通过这个中美关系正常化，对于我们美国和中国发展这个政治、经济、科学、技术和文化以及其他各个领域的这个关系有着广阔的前景。
Through this visit, and principally because of the normalization of relations between China and the United States, we look forward to broad prospects to the development of political, economic, scientific and technological, cultural, and any other fields in the development of such relations between us.
Do you believe you can maintain the traditional Chinese culture while importing all of this technology from the West?
在那个进口这么多西方技术以后啊，您想是不是还能够保持中国的传统的文化？
肯定不。
It is a matter of certainty we will maintain our traditional culture.
Mr. Vice Premier, we're going to learn very shortly of the agreements you have made here. You're going to sign some protocols at the White House. What have you disagreed about in your discussions with President Carter?
副总理先生，不久以后我们就知道您将要签订哪些那个协定和哪些议定书。但是我想问一问，同卡特总统会谈期间呀，有哪些问题你们没有取得一致意见呢？
我想我们的方式是相互阐明自己的观点，我们都不妄图把自己的观点强加于对方。
Our method is for each side to express his own views without trying to impose one's views on the other.
但是 正是因为这样子，我们会谈是非常融洽的。
And it's precisely because of that that our talks have been very cordial.
Could you say just what the principal dangers are to this continued euphoric honeymoon period between our two nations?
您是不是可以说一下，就是您觉得啦，对我们目前这样一种那个非常心情愉快的，可以说是那个蜜月性质的那个中美关系的那个危险性何在？危险就是是不是会对这种蜜月性质的关系有什么危险没有？
没有危险。
I see no danger.
继续多下去。
The honeymoon will continue.
But this interview will not, Mr. Vice Premier. Our time is up for all of us. Thank you very much.
但是我们这次那个会见不能够继续下去的没有时间了，谢谢您。
哦，谢谢你们。
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So concludes today's interview at Blair House with Deng Xiaoping. This is the final day of the Chinese leader's visit to Washington.